Hi, I'm James Christmas, and today I'm going to tie a fly called James's sand prawn. It's a fly that I came up with here on Alphonse Island quite a few years ago. Okay, so in order to tie this fly, what you're going to need is some lemon polar fiber, some rubber legs, these are tarantula legs, sort of yellow and black, some shrimp eyes, and some orange pigment, as well as some orange tungsten beads. It's quite a simple pattern. There's not a lot of complicated tying involved. It's proven very effective on the bonefish, and I've also taken all my personal permits on this fly. So it's quite a versatile pattern that seems to entice all manner of species that feed up in the shallows. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is just tie in a little front section of this polar fiber. I'm just going to pull all the sort of loose stuff out and just use the longer fibers in tying this stage. What I try to do is you tie in this front section and then just tie it down slightly down the bend of the hook, just so when it's sitting upside down, it's sort of, this front section is facing up in the water column. It's very important when working with this polar fiber material that you try not to use scissors in sort of getting the edge. It's quite a soft material, so you can break off the fibers individually with your fingers, which gives it a more sort of natural edge. So the next thing that goes into the fly are these little shrimp eyes. I'm just going to get a length here, cut them off. It's very important when you put in these eyes and the weed guard, which actually holds the beads in place, that you quickly singe the ends to form a little mushroom. This prevents the stuff from being pulled out by the fish when he's chewing on the fly. Okay, so what I've done here is I've tied in one of the shrimp eye on each side like this, and you just sort of bend them outwards just to give them a more sort of natural positioning. The next stage of this fly requires that we put in 2 strands of what I like to use is just 20-pound fluorocarbon. It's quite a stiff material, so it basically becomes an effective weed guard at the end of the fly. Because I use this fluorocarbon to put the beads in place, the beads form the weight of the fly, it is tied in this early stage of the fly because it will be used at the end. So I'm going to tie this strand of fluoro, one on each side next to the eyes. Okay, so we've got everything in place. Next stage is to put in the rubber legs. So I'm just going to cut 3 sets of rubber legs here. Once I've got those, I'm going to tie them in one by one. It's important to just allow a little bit of small little 2 to 3 mil space between each set of legs here. Okay, now I'm just going to create a thread taper just behind this ball that's here, that's been created from tying all these materials in. It's just to create a decent body shape once you put the dubbing in the fly. Okay, the next stage of this fly is I'm going to put in a sort of hidden, what we call a hotspot. I'm just going to use solar res and a pigment. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take a tiny little bit of pigment and mix it in thoroughly to the solar res. I'm just using the thin solar res here. Okay, the next stage of this fly is to dub the body, also with this lemon yellow polar fiber. Just got to take care to dub nice and neatly in between the sets of legs, just to help them stay in place. What I like to do is just to basically pluck some of the longer polar fiber out of the patch. It's better to do that than to cut with a pair of scissors. So we'll just basically pull it out by hand and then dub onto the thread. What's quite nice about this polar fiber is that when it's wet it becomes reasonably translucent, which is why we put the hot spot underneath the material. So when the fly is wet, this little hot spot will basically shine through the material, which is quite effective. Okay, once I've got the dubbing in place, the next stage is to add the weight for the fly. Now the weight of this fly is basically formed by attaching 4 tungsten beads. I like to use these hot orange tungsten beads as they kind of possibly indicate like the organism carrying its eggs underneath its body. So what I like to use is basically for the smaller version of this fly I'll use 4 2mm tungsten beads, and then if you want to make it slightly heavier then you can just up the size of the beads that you're using. So let's say for deeper water I'm going to use 4 2.5mm tungsten beads. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2 of these beads to each of these strands of fluorocarbon. Okay, once I've got them onto this fluorocarbon, we're then going to position it basically underneath here by pulling it back, forming a loop. So these beads, you want them to be able to move freely, but they mustn't be too loose, otherwise the fly won't sit right on the bottom of the water column. Okay, so you can see that these beads can slide up and down this fluorocarbon here. As I said, we're going to use this fluorocarbon at the end to form the weed guard as well. So we're going to take it all the way through like this, and then we'll fold it back and tie it in at the end of the fly. So I'm just going to add another couple of beads on this side. Okay. I like to use the two sets like this, one on each side, just so when the fly is stationary it sits naturally on the bottom of the water column. Okay, so once I've got these in place like this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie these bits of fluorocarbon back to form the weed guard. Okay, the last stage of the fly is to put in a little tail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut some of this polar fiber. Then we're just going to whip finish and trim the tail, and then it's ready.